Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you, for some reason, for whatever reason it may be, need more proof that Disney is allergic to making money or is somehow completely obsessed with the idea of losing money, well, we're going to have another example. So we have an article here from Bounding Into Comics that has officially proven, and it's been announced through the official Star Wars Twitter account, that Ahsoka Season 2 is in the works. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Ahsoka, the worst watched Star Wars show in the history of Disney Plus, apparently is being rewarded with a Season 2. This is the exact example of what it means to fail upwards in Hollywood. We all know that this happens time and time again with different TV shows, different avenues in Hollywood, different movies, and we're seeing yet another example. So let's get into this article, guys, from Bounding Into Comics. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Like the video to push us out into YouTube algorithm, and consider subscribing to my manga channel. The links are in the description box below. I would love to see you there. So it says the headline reads, Star Wars clarifies future of Dave Filoni's Ahsoka series with Season 2 production tease. This week saw two big production moves being made in a certain galaxy far, far away, and depending on your point of view, you either found the results to be refreshingly optimistic or wholly uninteresting. For the record, I found myself in the former camp. Disney announced this week that Star Wars is returning to the movie theaters with the Jon Favreau directed, Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy produced The Mandalorian and Grogu, which the studio indicated in their announcement that the film would lead Lucasfilm ongoing future development slate. These people are so dependent on Grogu, it's ridiculous. Like I cannot imagine that they are so obsessed with The Mandalorian and Grogu to the point where they had to make a movie about it, right? They don't want to admit that the viewership is going down like ridiculously for The Mandalorian. Okay, we did analytics for Mandalorian when the last season came out, and it was pretty obvious they lost hundreds of thousands of viewers, at least when it came to the Nielsen data. We're never really going to know how many viewers they actually lost because Disney doesn't like to release viewership numbers unless they are in the green, and 9 times out of 10 they are not. They're actually getting slammed and they have very little viewership for their shows, so they don't like to release the numbers. Okay, and that's one of the things that I wish the strikes were able to succeed in, were that they would have to release the numbers for streaming services, but unfortunately we didn't get that. So they're never going to release their numbers. We're never really going to know how much viewership they're losing, but we can have a damn good idea based off of different ratings that come out, like the Nielsen data. So it says in the same update, the House of Mouse also made mention of upcoming film projects in development for directors Charmin Oboy-Chinoy, aka the super activist female who is directing the Rey Solo film, and James Mangold and Dave Filoni, the last of whom they noted was also currently developing Ahsoka Season 2. Well, that's great. For the couple 100,000 people that are excited for Ahsoka Season 2, hats off to them. Congratulations. God knows you could have had way more viewership if you were write a halfway decent Star Wars show, but I know you're basically incapable of doing that. And at the end of it all, it doesn't really matter anyway. Everything's going to circle back to Rey. So I say this time and time again, if you have a problem with Rey, if you feel like Rey destroyed Star Wars as a whole, and yet you're still watching these Star Wars TV shows because you can't help yourself, because you think that it's going to somehow change over time and somehow things are going to get better, well, guess what? They've admitted time and time again that it's all going to circle back to Rey. So if you have a problem with Rey, watching all these shows is not going to do anything other than upset you in the long run. Not only that, they are heavily relying on Baby Grogu to try to bring in the female viewer, because God knows that's all he's used for, to bring in the kids and to bring in the female viewer, and it's not really working anyway. It says this unceremonious reveal was then followed up on January 10th by a more substantial tease related to the Togrutan Force users' return to the small screen in the form of a tweet. That was followed up today by yet another tease related to Ahsoka, a tweet containing storyboard of art for the second season. Now, if you see this storyboard, like, you really, why even bother? Like, why even? Nobody's going to get excited from this, okay, number one. And number two, the very few people that might get excited are just shills for Ahsoka for obvious reasons, right? When you pander to people with identity politics, when you make a girl boss show like that is so terrible like Ahsoka, and you make her into a Mary Sue, a character that should have never been a Mary Sue to begin with, it ends up being something where the only fan base you're going to have is activists. That's the only people you're going to have watching your show, and this is why you keep losing viewership, because most people are not activists. Most people do not live their entire life in politics or identity politics or just anything in that realm. Most people don't live their lives like that. So when you pander a virtue signal to try to gate that audience, all you're doing is getting a smaller and smaller audience, because you're alienating 90% of the people that would have watched your show if you didn't do that in the first place. It says in the image, Ahsoka and an individual who looks like Sabine Wren are seen standing on the statue of the Father, one of the 3 Mortis gods introduced into the canon in the George Lucas produced 2011 Star Wars The Clone Wars Wars animated series, and the location where the late Ray Stevens' praiseworthy fallen Jedi Balin's skull was last seen in the first season. The words of the story continues written above their heads. This confirmation of a second season comes as a positive turn for the Filoni spin-off series, given that just this past week, doubt was cast on its future when Ahsoka actress Rosario Dawson herself admitted that she has yet to be approached about getting back into costume for another outing as a titular heroine. I do remember reading that she said basically nobody approached her about a second season, but I remember I didn't make a video on it, but I remember talking about it in private chats and talking about it on streams and whatnot, and I said that there was definitely going to be a second season, because let's be real, even though this had the lowest viewership, that's not going to stop them from making a second season. Disney especially loves to fail upwards. They love to give their girl boss shows multiple seasons because they have to, right? They can't cancel these shows. Every time they cancel shows like this, they get in so much trouble. They get so much backlash from the activists that are like, well, why don't you just make a second season? Who cares if nobody watched it? I want you to make it for me. I want you to spend millions and millions of dollars for me so that you can lose millions and make me happy and validate my existence. You know, that's the situation that they're in. So either they go full force and pander and virtue signal nonstop regardless of how much money they lose, or they circle back and they cancel the show. We all know what they're gonna do. So that's why, like, I do love covering this stuff, because you know what? I know they're going to keep doing it. And it's just more fodder for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just more stuff for me to talk about, because Disney doesn't love to shut up. Disney just loves to keep going and keep failing and keep failing. And I think at this point, Disney, it's pretty safe to say that they're using failure as some sort of metrics of success. Like, I don't know what kind of like backwards bullshit Disney's pulling, but I think the more failure that they can create, the more successful they deem themselves. That's the only way I could see themselves rating themselves at this point. It says, though Ahsoka was far from the smash hit in terms of viewership, well, bounding, that's putting it very lightly, the show exists in a unique space within the Star Wars fandom as a crashing point for various elements from across the franchise's entire canon, such as the Night Sisters from the aforementioned The Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker's emotional turmoil as depicted throughout the prequel trilogy, and even the character of Grand Admiral Thrawn from Timothy Zahn's The Heir to the Empire book series. Well, so basically what you're saying is they relied on cameos to carry the show. This is what Disney does with their female-led TV shows. They rely on male cameos to carry it, because God knows they know that nobody's going to be watching this show otherwise. And it's sad, because Ahsoka's actually a fairly liked character in the fandom, at least the actual real Ahsoka. This version of Ahsoka, this terrible version from Rosario Dawson, this Mary Sue version, nobody likes. But the previous versions of Ahsoka, people actually do like. So we're going to see what happens with Season 2. I have a feeling that it's going to be even less viewership than Season 1, if that's even possible, because Season 1 got such abysmal viewership to begin with. But we'll find out what happens as time goes on. But at least you guys got your confirmation. Season 2 is in the works. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.